Yeah, it really is. Moving on.
Yeah. All right, but at least I got some things to do today that I will get done. I hope. All right. Okay. Welcome everybody to Talking Niagara this morning, and this is your live discussion about news impacting Niagara region, Niagara community, etc. And it's basically wide and varied. The topics we discuss each day, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I brought this one up because I saw this and I went, oh my God, I remember when this first happened, this Port Dalhousie restaurant arson. So it's over a year because it happened back in September 12th, 2024. And they basically, this is a Castillo Shawarma in Lakeport. In Lakeport Road in St. Catharines, and they still haven't caught the people who did it. And I have to wonder, if this is an argument for more money to the police budget.
I don't know. I think they probably have as many arson specialists as they need, and if they don't, they can tap into the Ontario, the OPP if they really need it. The problem here is who did the arson. Is the arson the two different possibilities I thought of when I read it was, first of all, somebody who is racially prejudiced against, I think there were Lebanese people, were they not, who owned them?
I'm not sure. Probably because a lot of shawarma is a Middle Eastern dish, right? Lebanon,
yeah, it says here
Lebanon's a big center of
operated by Syrian immigrants.
Syria, there we go. That's another
Syrian
area.
Immigrants.
Yeah. So whilst they caught a video of the suspects speeding away, they never actually caught the suspects.
No, and as I said before, part of that reason might be, one, was it an act of bigotry, where somebody just got mad at those Arabs kind of thing and burned their place down, or was it an act of extortion? Was it an act of you pay us protection money or we're going to burn your place down? We're going to make sure that you don't run. So if it is an extortion case, the Syrian immigrant will probably not reveal that part of it, because things might be getting worse for them. That may be the true issue here. It could be protection money. You didn't pay your protection money, so we're going to burn you down. And a lot of new businesses from the immigrant community find that. We heard about things like that with the triads in when the Chinese and Cambodian and Vietnamese criminals first came into the country many years ago. That was one of the things they did, is they sold protection money. You cut us in, or something may happen to your business. The other possibility is just plain ordinary bigotry, because it's a targeted attack. There wasn't other arsons around, so you cannot put this on a pyromaniac. A pyromaniac is somebody that just likes to arson things just to see them burn, because he or she gets a joy out of it.
You can't. Yeah, in this day and age, you cannot. So, sorry, I heard some of that, Dave.
Yeah, the connection's not good. So what I said was, I fear that it was extortion.
There we go.
So
Sorry
what I
about
was
that.
saying, what I was saying is it's either extortion or it's a act of bigotry because it was targeted. There, I think you can eliminate pyromaniac because there haven't been other arson events since then. It's over a year,
Yeah.
and and the evidence they do have is obviously somebody ran in with a can of gas and lit things up. They're lucky that damage wasn't any worse than it was because there was happily some people cleaning up in a place close by who saw it and phoned it in. But the internals got all wiped out.
Yeah.
And who did this? Was it an act of extortion? Was it someone who said you didn't come up with your protection money, so we're going to burn you down? Or was it an act of bigotry where somebody targeted the outfit?
Another aspect is act of bigotry. That always worries me more and more when you hear about immigrant businesses. I've been hearing too much noise on Facebook about saying Canada for Canadians.
Yeah, but this arson is an extreme thing because if somebody get caught doing arson somewhere along the line, it's a very serious offense and they're going to go away for a long time. So people tend not to do it. After the 9/11 attacks way back when in Hamilton, somebody attacked a Sikh temple thinking it was a mosque. They didn't know the difference. So that was really a targeted attack out of rage for against Arabs, but of course they picked on Sikhs. I think it was a Sikh temple that they actually burned. So who did this? Obviously, it was either for money, extortion, or it was an act of bigotry. And because of the way it was done, I have a feeling it was more like an act of bigotry because some of it's on video where car shows up, guys jump out, douse the place with gas, light it up and run out. That is really not exactly the most sophisticated way of doing arson. Arson's real professionals can cover their tracks very well. And so I have a feeling that we'll lean towards an act of bigotry here. The other, of course, is there might have been it may have been a problem with somebody that doesn't like them, even in their own community, because according to the video there that they do have, one of the men seemed to have darker skin, so he may have also been a Syrian himself, or somebody like it was like a mid-tone color, which you would sort of a swarthy color that you would associate with somebody maybe from the Middle East who may be.
Well, but you see, there are also many factions there, of course.
Yeah, and then the other person was a white person, so I don't know if it was a paid arson. It was sloppy. They did manage to cover themselves up pretty quick, but when you think of arsons and the way they do things, normally they're much more sophisticated in their technically good at what they do. There's no arson anywhere around when the place actually goes up. So I don't know. It could be extortion, or it could be the fact that it's been kept quiet for so long and the police haven't been able to crack it. Seems to me that they're stuck. So that may leave credence to the fact that it was a professional job.
Okay, so I've got this comment about, I'm jumping on now, I feel like it's also raises the question why there are many Christian churches being torched. And that actually, and what I'm saying is that bigotry can flow in all directions, and that's for sure.
Yeah, that is true. Some of the churches were being torched in Canada because of the residential schools thing and their association with churches. So we found that, or suspicions were that it was indigenous people torching churches that were associated with the residential schools. That was a thing. We found what happened. There was a bunch of churches. There's a bunch of churches being torched in France, and we don't know who's behind that either.
And there's another thing that bothers me about this, and it bothers me whenever I see this symbol. There's a symbol out there which is done by, it's an international symbol, which is a symbol for halal. And often when I see that symbol, I've seen uneducated people saying, "Oh, they're collecting money for Al Qaeda." Right? It's absolute hogwash. They're not. They're not collecting money in the way that, you were to an Irish bar in New York back in the day. You were paying the IRA.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, but this is it could be, but they wouldn't obviously advertise it on the front of their store. They put halal out there so everybody knows that it's safe food for Muslims. It's just might as well put the kosher sign too. It's the same thing. Exactly. When you put kosher on a building, it tells the customers that the food in there was kosher, which is the Jewish dietary law, and halal is very similar to
identical, actually, from what I understand.
No, it's not identical. It's not identical. Yeah. No, there's different cuts. They have their own. It's extremely similar, but there are different cuts of beef or lamb or whatever that. So it's not exactly. No.
All right. Anyway, but but again, the question here is we've got a twofold thing, because locally. Police have been crying out for more money on the budget for next year. And they may be arguing that, in fact, actually, they don't have the money to be able to investigate this type of crime.
Well, I tell you how we don't get halal. I remember going into one of the grocery stores here in Niagara Falls and seeing halal, little signs halal on pork. And I said, wait a minute, something's wrong here. And so I asked the guy that was stacking the stuff, and he went and got his supervisor, and I said, "You're putting halal signs here on pork. And he says, "I don't know. They just give us these signs because it had a blank space on it, and it had halal on top of it. So that's the signs they gave him so they could put the prices on it." And I said, and then I had to tell him, "Do you know what kosher is?" He said, "Yeah." Well, halal is the same as kosher, very similar. This is like you're putting kosher on pork products. It's the same thing. Don't use these signs. It's very misleading for anybody that might be coming in here.
Yeah,
so kind of understood what I said. We took them down.
And Carla made the point. Halal relates to the processing of the meat. Yes, it does. Absolutely, it does. And it's done in exactly the same way as kosher is done with the processing of the meat as well. Similar types of things. And of course, absolutely, Muslims do not eat pork.
Yes, it's very what people don't understand about Islam and Judaism is the sort of the mother of Christianity and Islam, and Islam and Judaism are much closer to each other than Christianity is to the other two religions. All three religions believe in the same God. Christianity and Islam believe in Jesus. In Christianity, Jesus is a divine person. In Islam, Jesus is one of the most important prophets. So Muslims believe Jesus is one of the most important prophets. There's an argument whether he's the second or third, the Abraham being the other alternative in that. The Virgin Mary is the one woman in Islam that is in Muslim texts is mentioned the most of any other women So
Apart from
there is associations between Islam and Christianity, but aside from that, Islam and Judaism are very much more closer than
yeah.
Christianity is to any of the other two.
All right. I think the point's been made here, Dave. Let's move on.
Okay.
Niagara's newest hospital will open to new patients on Sunday, but they're saying don't go there and have a touristy look at it. This is the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital will open its emergency department doors at 7 a.m. On Sunday morning. And funnily enough, this is run by Hamilton Health Sciences rather than Niagara Region.
Yeah, it has more association with Grimsby too. It has quite a bit of association with Grimsby, but I see that Doug Ford went down there and took complete credit for it. The opening.
Come on, it's the way that politicians do. You know that.
Yes, of course, and they're expected to be there anyway. It's a major event for the community, and they expect the notable politicians to be there and celebrate. We got this new hospital. It's quite a bit better a hospital than what is there. As a matter of fact, the old one is still functioning beside it and will be decommissioned soon. So now we have a much better hospital for those people in and around West Lincoln and those areas there. So that's a good thing. We'll be getting ours soon enough, I guess. But it's a long slog, and I don't know. We just need better healthcare. I think the biggest problem with our healthcare is the amount of doctors and nurses, and the wait times are incredible.
Mm-hmm. So I see that this is being built behind the old hospital, and presuming that what they will do with the old hospital is make another wing that will be added to this hospital.
No, they're going to decommission it, and I don't know what they're going to do with it. Now, the problem with these old buildings, this one is, I think, 76 years old or something like that. The existing hospital is long since they've got every dime they could out of it before they built a new hospital. But when it comes to repurposing it, the problem with these old places, quite often they're full of asbestos. So if they're going to decommission it and demolish it, that's going to be a big issue, the amount of asbestos in it. If they can repurpose it and make it rooms or an old age home or residency of some kind, all that would have to come in. Is it efficient enough? Obviously, the building is strong enough. It's lasted all these years. What can you repurpose it to? Can you make it residences? Can you make it offices? Do you even think it's worth doing that? So it will either see the wrecking ball or be repurposed somehow. But I don't think it'll be associated with the hospital unless they put offices in there for doctors or something like that.
Well, I'm thinking offices are the most likely reuse of it. As a way to get those doctors some form of area that they can use. But that wouldn't use all of it. So the wrecking ball will come to some of it.
Yeah, we don't know. There's no indication in the article of what it will be used for or what its fate is.
No, exactly.
If it's too old, it's 76 years old, and it is too much of a pain in the ass. A pain in the neck to repurpose it, then it will see the wrecking ball.
And you're right about the issues like asbestos. But the other thing somebody once said to me about older buildings, older hospitals, is that healthcare particularly has a problem that one should avoid the use of older hospitals because of problems like Listeria, Legionnaire's disease, and the like that tend to percolate in those older hospitals.
Well, if they're left, there are procedures in which to get rid of all that, and I think it would be probably just a decision on. Now you have a perfectly good building, so do you want to use it, or is it now just something that's going to be more of a problem than it is? Is it better to knock it down and build something else, or is it better to use it? That's their decision, and And like I said before, a lot of these old buildings are just jam packed with asbestos.
Yeah.
So that makes it a problem for demolition too, because then a lot of
Oh, yeah.
asbestos gets airborne.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we'll see. We'll see. And presumably right now the old hospital is not even, is not even emptied out anyway. So.
Well, we got a lot of homeless people. Like I'm thinking, there are all these nice little rooms all over the hospital. Is there a place we can put homeless people? Is there a place we can put intermediate housing there just to get people off the street and try to retrain them for jobs or anything? You have that building, but it's also down to money. How much money is it going to cost? And money is a big issue here, because every government in Ontario, in Canada, any separate different sub-government in the nation, and every government in the democracies nowadays is savagely in debt. And what do you do now? Is it worth it to continue it? Is it going to be a taxpayer burden, or is it going to be a plus factor? And this is a building that the taxpayers can now use for something else. So those are the decisions I'll have to make, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. And there's been a number of comments that have been putting up here. They'll turn it into a parking lot, says Rick.
Yeah.
And that may well be true. Right.
It could be. It could be.
Yeah.
Like some of these old buildings, they'll have to go in with specialists with a negative, put up a negative atmospheric tenting and strip the asbestos out of it, and then they can put it to the wrecking ball. Demolition is quick these days, very, very fast. It's more of the only thing that slows things down is loading up the rubble and getting it out of there, and where to put it.
Yeah.
So I don't know and plus they'll strip it of their wires, of course, all the copper pipe, all that's worth a lot. I don't know what else in any other kind of recyclable there is in there, metal. Sometimes bricks can be recycled as well. So I don't know what they plan to do with it, but there's options for them.
Yeah.
I suspect to just see the wrecking ball myself.
Yep, well, we shall see. All right. Niagara-on-the-Lake is lowering the speed limit on urban roads to 40 kilometers an hour from the 50 or other. Now,
I've long advocated for 40 kilometers in any neighborhood off the main roads. I advocated for 40 kilometers an hour. I think it's a good thing, because according to the statistics, you lower the speed from 50 to 40 and you reduce accidents, and you radically reduce fatal accidents. This is actually many years ago, decades ago, the Brits came up with that. They did a study that showed that if you're going, I don't know exact speeds, but I think it was 45 they used, and compared to 60 or 65, I can't remember, but they discovered if the person is going 45 and they hit another person, 80% of the people survive, but the other speed, 80% of them die. So there is a zone there where
at 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour, almost 100% of people, of victims in a crash will die. Right at 40 miles an hour, that reduces to something like 50%. I think I remember the study. At 30 miles an hour, you tend to have a lot lower. But if you lower the speed from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour, you almost have no deaths.
Yeah, well, we're talking here about from 50 kilometers an hour down to 40 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
and there's data that tells us that you will reduce fatalities and you will reduce when you do have an accident, the severity of it. So the damage, if you're just looking at financially, the damage done will be a lot less to the cars. But most importantly, if you're going 40 instead of 50, if you do hit somebody, if somebody walks in front of you, and you know that's a problem these days with everybody looking at their phones and just walking out. That's happened to me several times where somebody's just walked right out in front of me with the looking at their phone with ear pins in. So if you hit them, they walk off the curb and they don't notice you, and you hit them at 40, they're going to hurt, but they're going to survive. But if you hit them at 50, there's a lot more chance that they will have serious injuries or die.
Yeah. Absolutely. I do remember the British study, and it was very influential at the time, but this was way back in the 80s or 90s. And
well, there was one subsequent to that, though. There was one, just another one, and it was down. In the article I read, it translated whatever the speed was to kilometers. It was 45 to 65 or something in that range.
Yeah. Because, of course, they use miles an hour.
Well, here it says research by the Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals showed a reduction of 10% in average speed can result in 40% drop in fatal crashes.
There you go.
You know, and it says here they're also going to reduce the speed in the rural roads from 80 to 70. Except in the busiest ones.
There is another thing to be considered here. Is how when there's a 50 kilometer an hour speed limit, everybody's doing 60. When there's a 60 speed limit, everybody's doing 70. When it's an 80 speed limit, they're doing 90. And you know what I mean?
I was going to mention that reducing it to 50 may help people just reducing it to 40 may just bring people down to 50.
Yeah,
that are going over 50.
But at least it brings it down, because that's a generalized habit. I've seen so many roads whereby if you're going at the speed limit, you're going slower than everybody else on the road.
Yes. Yeah. So, but basically, to get people under 50 in urban residential areas is I think is a very, very good idea. So if you're going down Portage Road or Drummond or whatever, you can do that. Yeah, you can post them as 50, but as soon as you turn off of them and get into the neighborhoods, you should drop it down to 40, which I generally drive anyway. I generally drive under 50 in residential areas, and quite often I get a tailgater because I'm going under 50, but I don't know what your hurry is, buddy, but this is a residential area with old people and young people, but if you can get it down under 50, it would be better. We do have fatalities, and what you want to really do is just reduce fatalities. And what's your hurry in a neighborhood anyway? Say you're going to be driving around Cherrywood Acres or something like that, or even Silvertown. Do you want to go bombing down the road at 50 or 60? What's the matter of just driving 40?
We don't.
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Yeah. So Ontario ponders making impaired drivers who kill parents pay child support. This has been something that has been pondered around for some time.
Yes, it has been, and
I got mixed emotions.
At first glance, you want to say, "Yeah, that looks really good."
Yeah, but got mixed emotions.
But let's say if you're an impaired driver, you get in an accident, you kill somebody, and the legal limit is 0.05, and you're 0.06, and that would make you legally impaired. But when a lot of places have 0.08 as the limit, you have to start thinking, do you want to crush a person for the rest of their life, paying a bill that may not have been their fault? I can see if anyone was stinko, yeah. And sometimes, even if you're stinko, it might not have been your job. It might not have been your fault in the accident. Say you're at a party and you've drank a little bit too much, but you're not far from home. So you jump in your car, hope you can make it there without being busted, and somebody blows a stop sign, and you get and you hit them, and there's a fatality in there. A parent of a child is dead. Was that your fault, or was their fault? Is it a fault of the alcohol? So there's a lot of situations here where it may not be justified, but generally speaking, I say it would be a very good idea to do that, to make a person responsible for at least some of the child's expenses going forward. Also, if you're going to cause a fatality, one of the rules they're coming up with, if you cause a fatality because you're impaired, you are never allowed to drive again.
Well, that's actually something that I wholeheartedly support. If you cause a fatality, not only should you be going to prison for a long period of time, you should never be driving again. And from a drunken driving situation, if you and I'm also in favor of tightening the rules on drunk driving. If I can get it that, again, like first time, there's a chance that you need to understand the problem. You need to get involved in reform. Second time, it's major. It is a problem. But the third time, well, I'm sorry, but now really you need, the third time of doing the same offense, drunk driving, you need to lose your record. You need to lose your license for life.
Well, what they do have, a friend of mine or an old coworker, he was kind of stuck in a situation where he was a reoccurring alcoholic. Every time he reformed, he fell off the wagon, etc.
Yeah.
However, on the other hand, he had bills to owe and he had people to support. So what happened was they put a device in his car, and he had to blow in the car every so often. It was at random intervals. So when we were carpooling with him, there was a little alarm that went off, and he had to pick up this device and blow into it and then put it down. And the device in the car would determine whether or not he was sober enough to keep driving. And he had to do this continually all the time when we were driving with him. That's the only way they would allow him to have a license.
Yeah.
Is if he had this device installed. And there were a number of different safety. There's a number of different things they used to make sure that it wasn't somebody else doing it for you.
Yeah.
Like the guy beside you or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, but I think there's a number of there's a number of things that I'm absolutely, I'm absolutely speechless when it comes to things like drunk driving. I don't think our rules are tough enough. I think we should be way harsher on those that partake in it. And this is one of these sort of things that if you get caught drink driving multiple times, there comes a time when you've got to say your license is gone for life, mate.
Yes. Unfortunately, the thing we have with substance abuse all over Ontario and there are a lot of people who are struggling with substance abuse, and if they can't drive to their job, they can't have a job. And we live in a society that's surrounded by substance, and many of us are victimized by alcoholism or substance abuse, addictions, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yes, the safety factor is paramount here. Nobody should be drinking and driving. I don't even know, what is the limit now? 0.05, is it?
I'm not sure, but to my, I've never drunk and drive. I stay, if I've had a drink, I don't go use the car, full stop.
Yeah.
And I'd probably be under. I'd probably be under the 0.5, but yeah.
You would blow zeros basically, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying zero because according to what I understood, if you had like a drink last night, that would still have a residual effect in your bloodstream.
It depends on how many hours afterwards.
Yeah.
I know when I was in my car accident, and they asked me if I'd had anything to drink the night before, and I said no. And then they said, "How about 2 nights ago? Did you drink 2 nights ago?" 2 nights ago? 48 hours, they said. Did you drink any time 48 hours before the accident?
Yeah.
40, and I was so surprised. Why would 48 hours? I mean, it would be way out of your system. But they're just looking. I didn't realize that that was just a fishing expedition. Oh, he was drinking last night, but he won't admit it. But he might admit to being 2 days ago. That'll give us something to work on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And when I go home and might have a beer or something after work, so I had to think. I think, did I have a beer 2 nights ago after work, or I had a really no, I don't remember. No, I don't remember having a beer or anything like that.
There you go. Okay, apparently 0.05 is for a warning. That's 1 beer.
0.05, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
and you get a 3-day suspension for that.
For 0.05, wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, I know they want to go down to zero tolerance. I think the biggest problem nowadays, though, are drugs that are hard to detect. You can be stoned out of your mind. You could have done some crack or a line of coke or something like that, and when they give a breathalyzer, you're clean. So you're going to have, and if they suspect that there's some sort of drugs, they're going to have to do a blood test on you. But when go ahead.
I love this one. I don't drink, but I get my hubby's hangover.
Well, the idea here also is when we had the OPP come and talk to us when we were down in Nanticoke working. They wanted to get some educational out there to as many people as they could, and it was all about drinking and driving. And they told us all about drinking and driving. But in this particular area, most of the distracted driving they see are wandering from lane to lane, which would cause them to pull somebody over, was because of fatigue. You get a lot of people working night shifts or long hours down that way, and they're very tired driving. And I can attest to that, because when I had to do a lot of driving to my works and stuff like that, and I finished a night shift, oh man, I couldn't keep my eyes open, so I'd have to pull over and sleep for 15 minutes, sometimes twice on the way home.
So on back to the original question, impaired drivers who kill parents should pay child support. I'm
not sure about that. I think it sounds good. It really sounded, when I saw it, I thought, oh, that's great. But then I thought of all the different implications. So I think it would have to come down to a judge's decision.
That's exactly where I am, because it depends upon that person working largely.
Yeah, so you would have to. I think a judge would have to understand all the mitigating circumstances. That could be the guide for the judge. When the person is judged that way, that would be, yes, you're going to have to contribute to that child's well-being hereafter. And but I think a judge would have to be able to mitigate that, because if you put too much strain on a person's income, they made a mistake. And also think of kids, young folk, right? They're stupid. They get their license at 18 years old. They drive like maniacs. They're dumb as dumb can be, and they get all drugged up or whatever, and they think they're Superman, and nothing can happen to them. They get in an accident, they kill somebody. First of all, somebody at 20 years old now has to live with what they've done for the rest of their life. They've killed somebody. They've killed the parent of a child. Number two, if you put too much of a financial strain on them, they'll never get their life in order, and you might not get any money anyway.
Yeah.
So I think it would have to, if it is a frequent impaired driver that does kill somebody, definitely. But you really have to have some mitigating factors when it comes to.
Well, I think that's the thing. That's
every situation.
Yeah, and that's an area the courts would look at, and the probation service would look at, and the like, right?
Yes, because I remember my halcyon days of youth and how reckless we were. And it wasn't just me; it was all my friends. We were reckless. We were invincible. We drove too fast. We drank and drive. We did many ridiculous things, and we didn't think of what kind of endangerment we may have had to others.
Yeah,
that has to be an educational thing too. It has to be brought to the schools, really, very much so, that educate people. Look, you are who you are. You're young. You're going to be dumb, basically. But remember this: every time you get behind the wheel, do you really want to live your life with a death on your conscience for your whole life?
Yeah, absolutely.
And to make young people very, very aware that their actions have consequences other than themselves, because you always get this: I can drive as fast as I want, or drink and drive, because it's my life and it's my thing, and I can make those decisions. So it's always, if I get caught or if I get crashed, well, that's my fault, but that was a decision that I made. But most people who think that way never think of the person they're going to kill.
Yeah.
Or the person they're going to injure for life.
Well, no, because they believe that they're infallible.
Yeah, and if they do get caught or they do get in an accident, well, so what? I made that decision. That's my problem. But you have to take it the step further and think: if I get in an accident with another car, am I going to kill somebody?
Yeah.
I'm zooming down the road
actually
with a belly full of beer, and I like to drive fast, and I lose control. It's a slippery day, and I wipe out a car that's just minding their own business, coming the other way, and I kill somebody or injure them incredibly, or even just destroy the car. That's a consequence of your action.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. The other and
you can argue all you want. You have the perfect right to put yourself in danger, but you do not have the right to put anyone else in danger.
Yeah. And part of what you just said there is part, of course, of the reason why the legislature wants to actually hold people responsible for those they killed.
Yes, because there's a segment of the population that will not, even though we have ride laws and all that, and we keep drinking and driving down to a certain point, there is a resistant amount of the population that still indulges in substance, mostly alcohol, but other substances, and continues to drive. I think also you're going to find a big problem with phones and that, because I keep running into that over and over every day. I go to a stoplight. The
Well,
other day,
actually,
same
putting
thing.
those,
I was at a stoplight and the guy wouldn't go through because he was on his phone when it turned green. And then when he did take off, he wandered one way and wandered the other. And
yeah,
he was going the 40 kilometers an hour or less, I could tell you that. But there was wandering this way and wandering that way. And then when
yeah.
they took their head up away from the phone, then they drove normally. So
Well,
that's going to be
those
an issue as well.
those earbuds or those headphones are problematic because it's one thing having a phone on your ear when you're walking. At least you've got an other ear that can hear things going on in the world, right?
Yeah, I don't agree with the earbud thing while you're driving.
Yeah. Or
I
why?
mean, we're not going to be able to stop people from taking phone calls in the car. That's a moot point. That was one of the issues a long time ago, that people shouldn't answer it, even if it's automated through your
I
panel.
hate taking phone calls in the car. I personally, I like to concentrate on driving. For example, if my wife calls, I know it's a 2-minute call, I'm done and dusted. But a lot of people, you get sales calls. No, I'm not taking your call.
No, I do get calls when I'm driving, and the first thing I tell them is I'm driving, and that kind of, let's make this quick kind of thing, and I'll call you back later, or I'll just, if there's nobody on the road and whatever, I'll talk to them for a minute or two, but very brief.
Yeah, I don't like driving and talking on the phone. And it annoys me when people. Yeah. This is politics. One can be sued for it. Absolutely, Rick. Okay, moving on. Calls grow for Ontario to step in as CAMI uncertainty continues, and there's not been a response by the province.
Well, the union members of Unifor are saying you're not going to, that if they start ripping out equipment and taking it out of the CAMI plant, they're going to be there to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah. I have been at the CAMI plant when there has been a union problem, but it was the building trades unions, and there was a pickets there, and we couldn't cross the pickets, of course, et cetera, and so I was thought, oh, wow, I've been there when that's been picketed. But the problem here is the province, maybe even the feds, gave all kinds of money and incentives for the CAMI plant there. And what GM looked like they were going to do is pull up all that equipment. Much of it was bought on the taxpayer dime, and take it down to Illinois or wherever they're going to go with it. I think it was Illinois, but I'm not sure.
Illinois, yeah.
Illinois or Indiana or something. Anyway, though, whatever it is, they're not going to let that happen. This has happened in Ontario before. Many years ago, they gave Volkswagen incentive to build a car, something to do with cars in Ontario. They give them lots of money. 2 years later, Volkswagen closed the place down, ripped up all the stuff, and took it to the United States. So that was Ontario taxpayer money, but they couldn't stop them from doing that because they didn't put any conditions on that money. Yeah. So they were able to just take that equipment that a lot of the Ontario money was put into and just take it away.
Yeah. And they need to put conditions on the loans like these, always.
And it's not only there. When I was working as a construction millwright, I would talk to people from the States, and they said, oh, well, they got government money to put $2 billion worth of money into a certain plant down somewhere in the States. I was talking to wherever the guy was from, I can't remember. And what happened was they would then, a couple of years later, strip it and move it to someplace else in the States or over to Mexico. So it's not only here that it happens. But I'm glad, but the province has to step up, and so the feds have to step up and say, no, you're not moving that equipment. Well, and if you are going to, you're going to have to give us back the money that we gave you.
Yeah, and London North Centre MPP Terence Kernaghan is is calling definitely for government action on this.
So what would that look like? Would it, so far as I can see, is basically legally, they probably could not stop them from moving that gear or dismantling the parts of the CAMI plant. But what they could do is make them accountable for the money and get the money back, or as much as they think they can get back.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, that's about all that they can. What they need to do is to you either leave the equipment or or you give the money.
Yeah. So for a month now, there is an uncertain future for the CAMI thing. Queen's Park. At Queen's Park, pressure is building for a clear answers about the future of CAMI. We don't know what the Ontario government is talking and how they're talking to GM right now. But I'm pretty sure that Doug Ford and anyone else who has moved to put more money into auto assembly in Ontario is very displeased by this. But he hasn't stated exactly what. And pretty much they also remind GM that Ontario is in a huge market for American cars, GMs. The Ontario market buys an enormous amount of cars that come from the United States. So they're reminding GM of that. But of course, you have that tariff barrier and the tariff interference from the Trump administration. So what it looks like is the politicians are saying to GM, yeah, you can sell GMs here, but you're going to have to make them here if you're going to do what you're going to do. If you want to sell GMs here, you want to sell a GM truck here, you're going to have to make it here. If you want to sell a sedan, you're going to have to make it here. We're not going to import vehicles. Like the big complaint from the States is they're importing vehicles and vehicle components from Mexico and Canada. But what isn't said is that Canada and Mexico, well, Canada in particular, brings in all kinds of car products from the United States.
Yeah.
Canada is the number one buyer of almost the exclusive buyer of General Motors or other American-made cars, and cars that are made like Toyotas or Hondas or anything else that is also made in the United States that comes up here. So if you want to play that game, where you won't take our stuff, but you expect us to take your stuff, well, hell, Mr. GM, you're going to have to build your trucks and cars here if you want to sell them here. I don't know how that works out because it's going to be a heck of a lot of investment. But if Toyota comes along and says, okay, I'm going to make a truck plant here, sell to Ontario, great.
Yeah.
And if it's, and why should we buy trucks and cars and stuff from the United States if they're not buying ours? So I don't know.
Well, in fact, actually, as of right now, this will change in the future. As of right now, most Canadians don't know the percentage of their car that was made in Canada.
No, but cars are generally thought to be Canadian made at 51% of the worth of the car, either in assembly or parts, comes from Canada. So if you think of any car plant in Ontario, almost all the steel comes from the Ontario steel companies.
Yeah.
So that would be a Canadian component.
Yeah.
Also, the assembly and putting together of the car is part of the worth of the car. So that would be added. So if it's Canadian workers that assemble the car, even if the engine's not made here or the tires or anything else.
Yeah, even if the engine comes from South Korea, it's or wherever, it's still put together here in Canada, and that's often the most important part.
Yeah. So if you go to Cambridge, to the Toyota plant there, or Allison to the Honda plant there, the steel would come from Canada. The other components would come from Canada, et cetera, et cetera. A great deal of it would come from Japan, the engines or whatever, whatever. And if the resulting product, if the price of it is 51% Canadian component, then it is deemed to be Canadian made. I think that's the way it works.
Yeah. And besides which, you will get, in a company like Toyota, you will get a number of Japanese made components, because there are Japanese specialty parts that are made directly for Toyota cars, and will come from the Japanese, headquarters plant, right?
Yeah, the engines and transmissions and things like that may be built in Japan, or even if they have a engine and transmission plant, which I've never heard of yet for Toyota or Honda, they might be built somewhere in North America. But the overall cost of it. Now you might get a General Motors car coming into, let's say a General Motors car coming into Canada, and 25% of the components could trace some part of the aluminum in them or the steel in them could come from Canada, but 75% of it was made in the United States. Ford likes to point out that their trucks and cars are 80% valued in the United States. So when we buy a Ford, we may only have 20% of the components of that particular car.
But it was going to vary. It's going to vary from car maker to car maker.
Of course.
Right? Yeah.
But the confusion here is, are we going to go back to the old ways? Before the Auto Pact, there was, of course, tariffs. So that's why Henry Ford built the first car plant that he built in Windsor. It was right across the river from Detroit, so he could keep a close eye on it. So he needed to build cars that were tariff-free in Canada, so that he could build cars in Canada and sell cars. That's the way it was. General Motors, the same. Then the Auto Pact come along, and they decided that there was no border tariff for cars built in North America, because those built in Canada and the United States were so closely tied, it didn't make sense to have the tariff wall up. And that sort of got reinforced by the NAFTA agreement, which pretty much agreed with the Auto Pact and actually used it as a template for NAFTA too, for other things. And then along comes this tariff war that we're having right now, and that's upset everything completely. That's put all the manufacturers in a bad spot. How they readjust their parts and all that.
Well,
and basically you're back down to where you were before the Auto Pact. Yeah. If you want to make a General Motors truck, if you want to sell it in Canada, you have to make it in Canada, because that's what they're saying in the States. We want the cars built here that we sell. We don't want inclusions from Mexico or Canada. Okay, well, we don't want your inclusions either. So I don't know. That adds a lot of inefficiencies, if you ask me.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, moving on. 2 people are charged in connection with 300 cemetery thefts. These have been mainly in Hamilton. Halton, but they have been across the province.
In mausoleums, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems that's a scam that probably has been going on for a while, but it's getting to the papers now. People realize that when people put their ashes of their loved ones in mausoleums or whatever kind, that they quite often leave keepsakes with them, and that might mean valuable jewelry, rings or a brooch or something that had some symbolic, some symbolism on it.
Yeah.
But of course, thieves are thinking, well, this is a good cash cow. Just bust into the mausoleums and into the into the urns where the people are ashes are, dump them out, get the jewelry that might be in there, and move on. Which I don't know. Like, that's the last thing I would ever do, is put jewelry or anything else like that in an urn before I buried it. But a lot of people, that helps them with closure.
Yeah.
Now these unscrupulous people are violating the graves or the crematoriums of people, and it's a lot easier to be doing it in a mausoleum or places like that, because you don't have in years gone past, if they suspect that somebody had jewelry on when they were buried, they dig it up at night and strip them of the jewelry. And that has happened in the past where people have gone into graveyards where they've observed somebody in the casket. They may have a necklace on or rings or earrings when they're being buried. Somebody will go and dig them up at night and strip them of their jewels. But mausoleums make that much, much easier. And sadly, it seems to be a profitable little business.
Yeah. Rick says in Thorold too, absolutely. Used to be, there's been several reportings, and he said this was done years ago. They used to call them grave diggers. Yeah, I know.
Well, the grave diggers back in the old days, and it wasn't just the jewelry they were after. They were after the bodies, because they could sell the bodies to hospitals and medical schools.
That's true.
And and the people that would dig them up for that purpose were called ghouls. They had a name for them. They were ghouls. So if you dug up a body and then delivered it to a medical school, the medical schools would give good money for new cadavers, because they needed them to study on.
Yeah.
And so they were implicated in the crime. But if the ghoul got caught, he might even be hanged for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. Okay. Yeah. So kind of that was our end of the day.
Right o'clock, right at 8:02.
Yeah. So anything else?
Well, I would just like to say that again, I'm bringing up Gaza. Atrocities are continuing to happen. West Bank too. Continuous murders and beatings.
The focus tends to be more now on West Bank.
Well, yeah, because it was out of the news, and there's a big push. I think the Zionists feel that the political politics, world politics are moving against them, and they want to make sure that it's impossible to have a two-state. So they're going to try to take as much land as possible away from the Palestinians that do live in the West Bank. And there's a big push for doing that, what the settlers are doing. And that is because I believe they see that the things are changing, and the United States might not back them up or look the other way. Basically, it's not just backing them up, giving them guns and bombs and stuff, but looking the other way when they're doing things that the United States has clearly said they don't want done.
Yeah.
For years and years and years, the United States has supported a two-state solution, but will not say anything about the excesses of the settler movement or Zionism. That's changing now in the United States, and the settler movement sees that, and I think they're thinking we better scoop as much stuff as we can now before we're forced not to do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Okay. And Dave?
Without further ado, I bid you adieu, and let's pray for peace.